Hey, what's up, guys? I meant to go over this for a while. I think I got this when it came out from Arktos. Oh, the naughty Arktos. From back in the, I don't know what to call it, the alt-right salad days. And this had come out. This is basically a collection of the amateur journal that Lovecraft was the editor of in this time period. Okay, and in terms of horror, there's not a lot of horror in this unless you're talking about the war that had gone on in this time period. But it's interesting from a lot of point of views to see it. Okay, you see the a man with instincts that in the end were proven correct, but he can get caught up in the weeds of, once again, what is traditionalism. Okay, what in terms of conservatism, it doesn't really exist at this point, you could say. But I'll go into that. The intro is, of course, by probably one of the biggest influences, at least back in the early days, on me, along with Jonathan Bowden, Alex Kurtagic, who's now sort of retired from this kind of stuff. He's like a power lifter that works with like powerlifting logs and whatnot in Wales. And he's also a black metal musician. Okay, like I said, him and Bowden, the British guys really had a big influence on me back then. The Americanism that was tied up in a lot of this stuff, I would argue, was a hindrance. Okay, whatever I think of the Anglo mindset, these guys being closer to it were able to, at least, in my opinion, dispel what was bad about it, but accentuate what was good about it. Okay, of course, in terms of an Anglophile, you never got a bigger Anglophile than Lovecraft, but. Also, the fascinating aspect for me, what I found most interesting in this, more than anything else, was the idea of self-publishing in terms of DIY, in terms of the stuff we do, okay, in terms of relation to other forms of, you could say, low-cost ways of getting ideas across to other people, okay, for way before the internet. Okay, the idea that he produced hectograph publications. Hectographs, man. I remember punk rockers doing that in the 90s. Hectographs. It's like the most basic way to print. But anyway, getting off here. He gives you, he goes over who Lovecraft was. A lot of this stuff we sort of know already, including, unfortunately, life is but a dream, and life is not even a lit match compared to time. But in terms of the amateur journalism aspect of this is to me what was the most interesting thing to me. Okay, amateur journalism involved much more than news and topical nonfiction. It involves short fiction, essays, reviews, news items, poetry, and polemics. And this is the big thing. One of the pleasures of amateur journalism was the social intercourse it offered adolescents in an age of limited communication and travel. Right? Exchanging publications enabled the young writers and printers to make new friends from all parts of the country. I like how he gives an analogy of this to like the tape trading scene, in terms of like death metal, black metal, thrash metal, and of course the modern internet. The people able to find each other with similar interests. Okay. Now, just a fascinating here, right? The Lovecraft already had a long history of amateur writing and publishing. He had produced, and look at this, man, 69 surviving issues of the Rhode Island Journal of Astronomy. Okay, and he also did other, he did weeklies and monthlies of other things as well. Look at this Planet. There was a single issue in 1903, and the Scientific Gazette, right? He did poetry. It's just interesting how he did this. Well, how did he do this? Right? I'm always fascinated. You could still do this now. Okay, this is like the most basic way to, you say, pamphleteer. More on that later, right? Good many of the scientific periodicals were reproduced using a process called the hectograph, right? Right? Yeah, you had the gelatin sheet in a pan rendered hard by glycerine, right? Master page is prepared whether in written form by using a special hectograph inks or in type form using hectographic typewriter ribbon. Artwork of all sorts could also be drawn upon it. So the pan would then be moistened and the master page pressed down upon it. This page would then be removed and the sheets of paper would be pressed upon the gelatin surface, which had now picked up whatever writing or art had been on the master. The surface would be good up for up to 50 copies, at which time the impression would begin to fade, right? So this is, I think people still do this. And this is like the most basic way you could, like, if you want to print up your whatever, your novel, your novella, your manifesto, your whatever, okay, in terms of a physical copy, you know. And I just thought it's interesting that it showed that the guy had, he was a dreamer, recluse, blah blah blah, all these myths about Lovecraft. He was a go-getter. He, on his own, okay, in the turn of the century, he was producing journals. Okay, and I did not know that. It's as fascinating to me as anything else. So now, what will I say in terms of the themes here? I will say there's a lot of stuff in here that I don't agree with Lovecraft on. Okay, but I will argue that where he's coming from is not misguided or bad. Okay, he's a loyal Anglophile, so he's loyal to Britain and thinks that America, should beat the Huns, right, the Germans. Although there's a little complexity there in one of the passages I'll read. Of course, we know what that is. Okay, in terms of a brother's war. Right? Other things like prohibition. I mean, the man I don't think ever touched the liquor alcohol. It's like the straight edge dudes that are like, I never drank one drop of alcohol in my life. I have a lot more respect for the guy who gave up on drinking because he was a drunk, or his father was an abusive drunk, or the mother was an abusive drunk. But it sort of comes off in that sort of teetotaler, holier than thou sort of mentality, which you really get in the Protestant religion. Of course, I always argue that regardless of how atheistic him or let's say Varg is, the high Protestant strain of the Nord remains. Okay, it takes different forms. I don't know. This is my opinion, and I'm not using that to castigate anyone. But despite that, there's things that I really enjoyed in reading this. Okay, it's not like this is like the real deal stuff. Like they're dealing with real issues in here in terms of culture and in the culture war. He has some issues with socialists later in here that you can see. Although he sees these socialists, he mentions their, let's say, I don't know, their pedigree, which is he mentions the ethnicity of many of these socialists. But the difference is he doesn't see as something so opposed as just like a kind of a difference in mindset. I guess he took that in good faith. In case in point, Mr. Charles Isaac said. But anyway, I'm just gonna go over the crime of the century. I like that. I'll read some of this. Like the present European war. Remember, this is 1915. This is the first issue. Present European war, occurring as it does in an age of hysterical sentimentality and unsound political doctrines, has called forth from the sympathizers of each set of belligerents an unexampled torrent of indiscriminate denunciation. Right? The effeminate idealist, half awake from his roseate version of universal brotherhood, shrieks at the mutual slaughter of his fellow men, or singles out individual acts of cruelty or treachery as the objects of his well-meaning rage, while the erratic socialist, saturated with false notions of equality and democracy, raves unendingly against cruel systems of government which sacrifice a peaceful peasantry to the greed and ambitions of their warlike masters. But through the sober philosopher perceives in war phenomenon eminently natural and absolutely inevitable, though he realizes that the masses of mankind must remain subject to the will of a dominant aristocracy. So long as the present structure of the human brain does, he can nonetheless find in the colossal conflict an ample cause for the deepest regret and the gravest apprehension. High above such national crimes as the Serbian plots against Serbia, against Austria, the German discard of Belgian neutrality. High above such sad matters as the destruction of innocent lives and property, looms the supremest of all crimes, an offense not only against the conventional morality, but against nature itself, the violation of race. Now, right here, there's a lot of interesting things here that you see. This is a sort of nuanced view. Now, I'm all for, listen, but in World War I, I'm all for pacifism. I'm all for the socialists. Yeah, that's right. Against this stupid friggin' war, okay? Knowing full well that, I have anarchist tendencies. There's always going to be a government, right? There's always going to be power put on you, okay? I have pacifistic tendencies. There's always going to be war and power and struggles and death to think that that can be achieved is the end of that can be achieved is ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous. Doesn't mean you shouldn't try to strive for it when you can. So, but because he's going against idealism, but he sees that in the end, that this, as Lathrop started call it the European Peloponnesian War. You can see that something bad is happening. He's gung ho for the Anglo, but he sees in the Teuton, the German. He sees a brother race. Like I said, he has allowed her jealousy of England to conquer her intellectual zeal. Last I checked, it was the British Empire messing with the Germans, but that's of course I'm biased. Right? Therefore, we have reason to weep less at the existence or causes of the stupendous fray than at its unnatural and fratricidal character, at the self-decimation of the one mighty branch of humanity on which the future welfare of the world depends. Now, whatever, things of Lovecraft I disagree with, he sort of nailed it. And you didn't have a lot of guys nailing any of this other than, like I said, Lathrop started. So, I'm going to another one here. This is where I'm gonna have problems with him. Okay, this is about remember, Prohibition didn't come out of nowhere. Okay, right after the war, and Wilson, to his credit, tried to veto it, and he got vetoed. Okay, the Volstead Act. But this is a couple of years before, right? Outside the domain of pure literature, the conservative will ever be found an enthusiastic champion of total abstinence and prohibition. Whoa. Straight fucking edge. A moderate, healthy militarism is contrasted with dangerous and unpatriotic peace preaching of pan-Saxonism, or the domination by the English and kindred races over the lesser divisions of mankind. And of constitutional representative government as opposed to the pernicious and contemptible false schemes of anarchy and socialism. Right, well. There's other kinds of socialism, my friend, but though the first name of these items may be superficially appear as a rather inappropriate function for the conservative, it must be remembered that he who strives against the Hydra monster rum strives most to conserve his fellow men. I'm gonna spurg out and I won't read. We're done. No more Lovecraft on this channel. Arkham Reporter, you gotta stop. Because he was against out rum. Oh, please. Can you imagine? So, and I'll end this here. It's like I said. Will most of you find this interesting? I will probably say that for the Lovecraft completist, I would say yes. For someone like me who is in that camp, but also is interested in things like the war and the idea of the amateur press, in terms of what you could achieve back in the day when you had nothing but a pencil and a piece of paper, it is a fascinating book. It's well worth reading, in my opinion. And what I'll do is I'll end it with the last thing from this. Of course, in 23, my man is about to go to this place called New York, as Michael Houellebecq. So I simply said what he learned. New York is where Lovecraft learned to hate. You can imagine me, I grew up there. Oh, man. Where did I learn? Anyway, and I'll read the last paragraph of the last issue of The Conservative. Okay? Far be it from The Conservative to decry humor in amateur journalism. Hypagana knows how badly we need a genuine article, right? That is a reference to Lord Dunsany. But are the not times when its judicious discipline augments our power of creation and appreciation in certain fields? Who will say that Lord Dunsany's delicate arabesque touch has not suffered, as his wit has become less and less detached from it, or that Arthur Machen is not the stronger for the childlike naivety of his outlook on the dream world? And is it not possible that some of the Philistine hyperticklishness and unaccustomed whimsy springs from the lack of that deeper and more pervasive humor, which sees in all human life and effort an ironic comedy? Verily, laughter is an art form for the discriminating. So my man is making the case for humor, right? Obviously, the greatest horror and humor. Some will argue that they are the flip sides of each other. And there was humor in Lovecraft stories. There was humor in Poe stories too. So And the man definitely is speaking well of something that you should cultivate. Like the funniest guy I know is James, right? Talking about the most horrible things, laughing his ass off on the camera. So, and we'll just end it here with the last issue, right? The Conservative, edited and published by H.P. Lovecraft, 598 Engel Street, Providence, Rhode Island, Providence, under the auspices of amateur journalism, from the press of C.A.A. Parker, 30 Waite Street, Malden, Massachusetts. And, it was good. It's recommended for Lovecraft completists, and just in general, man. It was a lot of fun.